How often have you found yourself at this time of year sitting down all excited, Sagittarius season, we are all fired up again, we have the vision, we are clear about it, we sit down, we have all our tools, whether you do it digitally or on paper, planning. The year is near its end and we have a new year and we are full of hope and new, like a sense of new adventure starts, right? And we have all these things we want to change and we want to improve, we want to be better at, and so we plan for that. We look ahead and we have these 12 months and we figure out where our holidays are, where our work time is, where our family is, time, or however you do your planning usually, right? And then what happens? Have you found this, that 6 months later or even a month into the new year plan that you have just so beautifully laid out in your wherever you do it, right? It just either you just given up, you just very quickly, or it took you a while to realize that it's just not happening, or you may have achieved it or you're close to achieving it, but you feel exhausted, you feel miserable, you feel burnt out, just like, just so tired. Well, I think in my experience, I found that when this happens is because we haven't used astrology to help us plan. So in this video, I want to do exactly that, share some of my thoughts and experiences and tips of how and why it's important to, I think, use astrology to help us plan in order to avoid those two things. So what happens is that the transits that are happening in the skies are the biggest energies. Like that's, the Pluto in Capricorn is huge. Like it's at the end of its journey there, and I'll have some more on that in the coming weeks. But Neptune is also at the end of Pisces. Jupiter's changing sign next year. Also Pluto is too, and so all of this is affecting us. These are like these big giants that I call them, like Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. The big, that's five, right? The big five are the biggest, because they're so big in their importance and in their, not always size, except for Jupiter, but we feel them the most, right? So those are the energies that are already like vibing in the universe, right? In the world around us, in the atmosphere. So just imagine, just think of that. So there's the waves and we're surfing. So would we want to surf the waves that are already there? Otherwise we're going to crash, right? So what happens when we don't use astrology? For instance, you start planning about losing, to lose weight. I've done it so many times, and I actually don't have like evidence exactly each time when I failed, which was a lot of times, what was going on transits wise, because I've been doing this since forever, like the planning of losing weight, way before I even figured out to plan with astrology, which is relatively recent, like last 10 years maybe. I've been planning with astrology. So anyway, would be like, what if Jupiter or even Pluto is transiting like conjunctive Venus or aspecting by transit your Venus or your moon? Those are the we eat because either we feel safe and kind of nourished and taken care of, or for pleasure. So the first one is the moon and the second one is Venus. So if you have Jupiter or Pluto transiting those two by aspect, I mean, you stand no chance. I mean, it's just like, well, if you have an example, unless this is in Capricorn, which could be, certainly, could well be, maybe then, because, Capricorn is all about limits and restriction and ascetic lifestyle, so possibly, right? Let me know if you have examples of these transits where actually you lost weight. But if you struggle with weight and eating, I imagine, no, I really do. Particularly with Jupiter. With Pluto, we can still work if we are consciously working with Pluto. I believe and trust that we could definitely use it to our advantage through some pretty intense and painful work, presumably, most likely. Where with Jupiter, I think not so. Or if you're thinking of like, oh, I'm going to have new friends, I'm going to be more socializing, going out, and Saturn is either in your fifth or your seventh, let's say. I mean, it's not going to be light. The sun, house of fun, fifth house, right? It's just going to, Saturn there, it's going to ask for you to be very structured in your fun. And that might be the opposite of your idea of fun. Or in relationships, it might be restricting you to like very serious and authoritative figures in your life that you actually don't like and do not consider as fun people, for instance. Just examples, right? So what happens when we plan without astrology, we plan for whatever we just desire and we think we want and all that stuff. And I'm not saying we don't want, but we pick just from, like I say, without consulting astrology. And then we essentially plan against the currents, the prevailing currents of the atmosphere or the universe, or whatever language you use to describe, the kind of energies around us that are working us, and we're working with them consciously or unconsciously, right? So we're planning against them sometimes, or, often. And if we're not, like I used so that's why the effort and the push, as I spoke at the beginning, or we just are smart and we give up, actually. So giving up is actually smart. If it's taking something so much effort, it might be the case that it's not for you. It's not for this time around, at least. So you see what I mean? When we don't consult astrology, we could well be working against ourselves. So instead of doing it like you did it every other time, right, at this time of year, this year, start with ephemeris, with your transits. So whatever you use to figure out your transits for the 2024, for instance, and by your transits, I mean, we have all the planets, we know where they're going to be. They don't move fast, these 5 ones. I mean, Jupiter and Pluto are going to change signs, but the others, Saturn and Neptune, are going to stay, and Uranus are going to stay in their signs, right? They're currently in. So there won't be change in that respect, but as they're moving degrees, there may well be conjunct, square, opposition your natal planets. Now, those are the points you want to plan around. So if you use ephemeris, you Google ephemeris, so 2024 ephemeris, EPHEMERIS, I think. I'm never good at doing this like that, just visually. And then it's a PDF you download, and you have from January, the whole year, day by day, planet by planet, degree by degree. And you just go, and you know where your natal planets are, you know which degrees they are, and you check what's happening. And then you plan accordingly. So if this year, also, I'll talk about what other ways you can plan, but this is like by transits, and the most kind of common, and the one I use most, like attract the most, I personally work with the most. And so if a lot is happening in your 9th house, and I speak from experience, and you have these dreams about career and just like new projects to start and, become success in them and all that stuff, well, might not be happening if you haven't got any. Yes, you will have Sun, Moon, Venus, Mars, Mercury moving through that 10th house. Mars not so fast, but still fast enough. And it will probably, Mars is that you might feel the more energy, but it will be gone within a month, if not even less. Not sure on top of my mind now how long it takes Mars to go through the sign. Doesn't matter. But my point is, they're all still very, very short bursts of energy and focus in your 10th house. But if you have nothing else of all those 5 big ones that I said, Chiron is another one actually, but if it's I don't know if you work with Chiron. If you do, then I would also very much look into that, look into Chiron. And so let's say those 6, if none of them are in your 10th house, then there isn't, like, you're not, I take this to be a sign, a mandate, a declaration, an invitation, a statement, however you want to call it, that I'm actually not meant to be focusing on my 10th house of success, career success, or public service success, which is, this is actually a public service channel, because I'm, that's what it is, all the YouTubers. So you see what I mean? So me planning for my career when everything is happening in my 9th house or somewhere else in my chart is not going to really, it's me going to be wasting what's on offer for me. So there's that. I'll be working against it, or maybe not so much against it. So like if I'm working for happiness and fun and stuff, well, Saturn is in my 5th. I'm working against it only if I'm thinking of fun in all those kind of light Leo ways. Then I'm working against it because Saturn is saying something very different. And nothing as lovely and joyous and expansive and radiant as Leo and 5th house would typically be. So you see what I mean? So that's what we are directly working against, or we are kind of focusing on something where there isn't much support for us, right? So it's so important to look at where these big 5 or 6 are in the house-wise in your chart, and then even more importantly, are they aspecting any of your planets? Natal planets by square, opposition, or conjunction. And so you map out those dates. And then you look at like if it's your moon, that's a great time to be thinking about your diet, your self-parenting, your needs, your standing up, your maturity. So then I would look if it's a moon, even if it's like aspected by any of the other, except for Saturn, like it's aspected by other 5, but not Saturn, I would be looking at Saturn. So look at the opposite planet. So moon and Saturn are the opposite, right? Because moon rules Cancer and Saturn rules Capricorn. So why I'm saying this is because whatever lessons you're learning, yes, you're learning through the transit. So if it's Uranus aspecting your moon, if you have moon in Taurus, right, then you will definitely want to be studying Uranus as an archetype, what it brings, what is the harbinger of, what does it do when it aspects a planet. You also want to be learning about the moon as an archetype. But I would also add the opposite. Remember, I spoke somewhere else in a Pluto video about polarity point, and often I speak of that. And in astrology, the ultimate goal is to integrate the whole chart. And all that means, it's like, look at the middle of the chart. That's the point, the middle point to all of everything, right? That's the kind of the metaphor of integration of one's chart. So we always are looking to bring in the opposite, to come closer to it, to meet them halfway. So the opposite to moon is Saturn. So think of Saturn as well, because that's the kind of the other side of the moon. Saturn has its own shadow for sure, but to kind of heal moon shadow, the shadow of the moon, we bring in Saturn. Yeah, so I'm going to leave that at that. By the same kind of similar rule, if it's happening, any of these planets aspecting your Venus or your actual Pluto, they could be aspecting your natal Pluto. Well, maybe not Pluto, but whatever other big planets, by square, or actually, why not by square? Certainly, Pluto and Libras are being squared at the moment. So yeah, my point is, it could be aspecting the big planets, or it could be aspecting the small planets. By small, I mean personal, like Venus, Mercury, and all that. So those are great times. Just think about what those planets mean, the transiting one and your natal one. And so if it's Mercury, for instance, that could be a time for writing, if that's your thing, or publishing, if it's Jupiter involved, or if it's ninth house involved, publishing, or just communication, or but writing, I suppose, because that's my thing. So I'm like really excited about Mercury transit when it happens, right? So that is how you plan. So you now have pinpointed the dates for 2024, and even if they're not like exact degrees, so they're not, don't worry about that. You want to be looking at, I would start to think about 5 degrees approaching, not, that's called waxing. So if it's like, let's say conjunction, your Mars is at 5 degrees Libra, okay, no, well, let's say it's 5 degrees Pisces, your Mars, right? And so Saturn, the moment he entered Pisces, I would have been considering that conjunction. Even though it's not, it's only when it gets, I mean, it is, even, it is, but it's not that most intense one. So if it's 5 degrees Mars in Pisces, Saturn already in Pisces at 0 degree is the time to work, consider that transit as one of your focuses for the year ahead, right? And to integrate into your plans, like what can you plan with that? Where is that Mars? And it's a Mars, so it's like an activity. What could you be doing? It's in Pisces. Artists, creativity is definitely my favorite, although it could be spirituality, it could be whatever else, depending on your house as well. And then you want to look at, so it's, when does Saturn get to 5 degrees of Mars? That's like, I would plan for something to come to fruition then, right? And then depending what it is, I would consider up until 2 degrees to be still active. 3 maybe, I don't know, but 2 definitely. So up until 7 degrees Saturn in Pisces, it's still active. So you have, that could be a couple of months or a month or whatever, that you have a time to kind of work on that something, or not work on it, you're working on it now, but then it's like a fruition of sorts. Or if it's a launch, like you can launch it then, right? And have the whole month of like sales, and, if it's in your 10th house, let's say. So if you're Gemini rising. 2 more things, retrogrades, and if it's like Saturn moves faster than Pluto. So you could have like something at 0 degrees Aquarius, 2 degrees Aquarius, that would mean, I'm pretty sure, or even 3 degrees Aquarius, that would, Pluto will reach that only in 2026, maybe, I think, maybe earlier, maybe 2025. But I would already now, even though it's still in Capricorn, although just for another few weeks, a month, I would already start to really think about what that means when Pluto meets your planet at 3 degrees Aquarius, what that planet is, what's Aquarius, what house it is, and then figure out your goal around that subject, right? And so if it's like in 3 years' time, or 2 or however many, right? Not in 2024, and you're planning for 2024, I would still put it as like a side project, or not too much side, but because it's Pluto, it's huge. This is, you gotta focus, you don't want to miss Pluto's transits or any of these 5s, like I say. So that's what I meant by degrees, and you can plan, even if it's not the exact, it's actually great, because it means you have time to really understand what that means, to do all kinds of shadow work or just work, on yourself and all that stuff. Retrogrades also are super important, like particularly if they're either stationed in retrograde or stationed direct on your planet or close enough. Oh my God, those are super important times, meaning that they're like, the energy is going to be super intense, but also what it means, that particular degree is significant and you have a planet in that degree or close enough. And I would work not with 5 degrees when it comes to stations, retrogrades and direct. I would really, ideally, you want to work a degree or the exact or the degree either side, particularly in the coming up. The waxing is always stronger than the waning. So if it's station, retrograde or direct around that, the degree either side, then it's on the actual degree of your natal planet by square, conjunction, opposition. That's a super important time to be putting in your planner. And then depending on the themes of the archetypes, the planet, the sign, the house that it's in will determine what their goal is. And then if it's station direct, I don't know if it can be both. Can it be both? Well, I don't know. Can't possibly think of it now. I don't think. But so if it's stationed in retrograde on that degree of your planet, then that would be a sign to rethink whatever your natal placement is, and then obviously house and the sign, and then Saturn influences it. So how does that natal placement deal with limitations, with manifestation, with materialization? How mature is it? How adult is it? How successful is it? How all the other kind of Saturnian themes. Yeah, you see how that works. And so if it's stationing retrograde, you're revisiting, rethinking that, and rejigging. But if it's stationing direct, let's say Saturn on that degree, or then this is like so if it's stationing direct and you have 3 months till that, or a year till that moment, I would be at today. So let's say you have a year till station direct Saturn on your sign, planet somewhere in your chart, right? It would be Pisces, obviously, because it's in Pisces. But it's station direct we're talking about, right? And you have, quite a few months till that happens. I would then, because station direct would mean, okay, you can go now. Now, I personally, you can maybe argue that, because it's happening, you will be already mature and all this stuff that Saturn is, right? And you will be given a go-ahead, possibly. I personally would always do it this way, which is I would now act as I realize that that's what's happening in a year, let's say. I would now treat it as if it's stationing today, retrograde. So I would revisit and review at how mature, how grown up, how limited, and what am I doing with those limitations? How real am I about that particular placement, right? So I'm already doing the work, because I would always consider that it's, I don't know, I would not, this is how I would do it. Okay, I'm not going to argue against myself anymore. So it's almost like you're really, like, by the time it happens, the station direct, when you're having a go-ahead to go and be so, like, successful, Saturn, right? Doing right by Saturn, and it's giving you that push and that support. I had done the work. And so I would probably surprise even Saturn, and it would go, wow, I thought you were 8, but you're actually 10 in terms of grading, like a teacher grade, right? Student grade, whatever. Yeah, you get what I mean. And now I just want to talk to you about like what kinds of or what are the, how do you say this? Well, they're not whats, they're whens. So when could you plan? And I find this, I've noticed this like really loudly over the years, is that I don't always feel like motivated to plan in December for the following year. So I'll share some of the other ways you can plan, or rather when you can plan. So first I want to say that actually to normalize that we don't always feel like planning in December for the upcoming year. And that's simply because it's winter, right? There's no we're still in the process of like hibernating. So and not just hibernating, we're it's the time of integrating what's happened up until now, right? So spring is a time for the new things to come. Now that's the time for the new things to start. So yes, we need to plan a bit before then, but December is just too early if the spring is end of March, right? Aries season. So I often felt like seasonal planning felt more aligned with me than this calendar, kind of artificial, if you like, man-made or human-made, woman-made system, right? So if you feel the same, and if you kind of find yourself pushing through or forcing yourself to plan but not really feeling the juices going, then this could be why. So wait till the I would call this like a astrology new year, which is the solstice. Hold on. No, I think it's called spring equinox. Is it spring equinox? God, I have this written down. I never know these things off the top of my head because astronomy is not my thing. This is not astrology. Anyway, so it's like that the day of when sun enters Aries, basically. That's the new year in terms of astrology, right? So you might want to plan in Pisces season. And Pisces season is actually great because it's the time of letting go. Like we are really the sort of let's say Capricorn and Aquarius season, not so much Sagittarius. Sagittarius is definitely the integration of the shadow work, and we are fresh with some fresh visions and stuff. But really, it's when we get to Capricorn and Aquarius season is that we are integrating what we've been learning and like making something with it. And it's only when we get to Pisces season that we now are looking at what we have done, what we have learned, what we have integrated. And by integrated, I mean we have produced, we have shown for, we have shown up for, we have something to show for what that something is, right? So that's integrating it. And now in Pisces season, we're looking at all of that and going, okay, this I'm done with, it's all done, right? And now what else can be put instead of this? And in Pisces season, we are kind of getting to that space of because we're emptying stuff, we are allowing for new visions and new kind of inspiration to come to us for the new whatever, for that plan, like for your plan for the next year, astrological calendar year, astro calendar year, right? Aries to Aries. So that's another different when to plan. Another one I personally love, although I don't necessarily, I use it for my planning, is the solar return chart. So depending when your birthday is, you could be an Aries baby, so it could be fitting, or you could be Capricorn, so the calendar year might work for you, and you might genuinely feel like it's your new year. And it is always in terms of your personal new year is your solar return, your birthday, right? Which actually, it's not your birthday because solar return can be a day earlier or a day later than your actual birth date, because it's when the sun enters the exact degree of your birth, and that varies by degree, by a day, either side. So anyway, so you can use your birthdays from birthday to plan. So each birthday, and that I mean, I've done that. In fact, I probably do that still. In fact, I have an ongoing kind of plan. But anyway, it's just, it's exciting time for me, always has been, at least like your birthday, right? So it's a great time to sit down and look back and what you've been and done and all that stuff. And using solar return. I mean, I love solar returns, and they tell you so much. They basically, I have a solar return specific video, a link below, or if I forget, as I keep saying, check at the very beginning of my early days of this channel. it's there. And they kind of highlights the key themes, like where is the sun, which house is your sun in solar return, what's your ascendant, and the ruler of ascendant. Those are kind of the three things. Otherwise, you can get too bogged down in detail of it. So if you're Libra rising, then you want to know where your Venus is. And then obviously Libra rising will be all about, you'll be learning, or for the first time maybe, or practicing, or, being tested on your ability to balance, to be diplomatic, to, see, to be airy, to be light, to be social more, and all that stuff. But where is Venus? Venus could be in Scorpio or Aries, and oh God, that's like a whole different story. But you get what I mean. So those will be your challenges. And then if the sun is, let's say, in the ninth house again, because that's one of my things of publishing a book, right? That could be a great time to publish a book. Or if Jupiter is in even irrespective of your, I would also sometimes look at just like where Jupiter is. So if it's in the ninth house, then also a good year to plan to publish a book. But yeah, you get the idea. But generally, what solar return helps you kind of see. But then you also work with the transits, as I spoke minutes ago. So you always work with that, absolutely. But this gives you like an add-on. So if you end up having too much dispersed energy in different areas, then I would pick still transits. So if your solar return is kind of focusing you elsewhere, like sun is in nowhere near the other points of the current transit for you, right? Then I would still focus on current transit, because they're the alive things. This is all kind of mathematical. I find these other, even though I love solar returns, they're still kind of too artificial. They're absolutely valuable, and I completely agree with that. But I think transits are what's alive, what's the pulsing life of astrology. So, hold on, let me see what else. Another time to plan, as opposed to calendar year, would be from your first house. So that is, like, let's say you're Taurus rising like me. So, although no, hold on. No, because that's also my birthday, so it's easy. Meaning my sun is in my first house. Let's say you are Capricorn rising. No, okay, I don't know. Hold on. Let's say you are Leo rising, right? You're Leo rising, but your sun is not Leo. You're somewhere else, right? Anyway, so it's not your birthday, is what I'm trying to say. Then you can. Here it gets a little bit more complex, and unless you've done my school, maybe this won't be familiar. I'll have to have a video or a book. It'll be in my book, definitely. This whole working with the chart. But the first house is like our birth. Like it is literally like at the time of our birth, what was rising on the horizon in terms. So in that sense, we come into this life through our rising sign, and it's a super important placement and sign, basically, and whatever else we have in our first house in that sign. Basically, it's how I work with the whole sign houses. So there is that sense of beginning. That's why I'm saying it's another good time to plan, to plan from your first house time. So plan when the sun is in the 12th house. Oh, so sorry, when I say the first house, I mean sun, when the sun enters the first house. So this is kind of like this is like your own astrological year. No, actually, astrological year is your very personal one, is your birthday. But this is the kind of replicates and mirrors this astrological year, generally speaking, worldwide, which is Aries season. So it mimics it, because that's the Aries archetype, first house. So you would plan during the Pisces season, or rather, sorry, your 12th house season. So whatever your 12th house is, or do you say Leo? Right. So that would be Cancer. So during Cancer season, when Sun is in Cancer, plan for the year ahead, starting with your first house, because then you're planning like as the Sun goes into your natural houses of. So when the Sun is below the horizon, plan for the time that's a time of incubation, like you are creating something, and then as it comes out onto the 7th, you're then ready to show to the world. Then it's all about. So that's a great way to plan projects, year-long projects. Year-long in the sense of 6 time for actually working or piloting or testing. Or also, like, you don't have to necessarily be completely cloak and dagger during those 6 months, but it's a great time again to kind of have like a book project, but any other project, right? And then when you come into the 7th house, it's a time to show to the world. And then you have, bring in 8th house when the sun is in the 8th house. In your case, that would be Pisces, right? You bring in other people maybe to collaborate with, and then you have some workshops in the ninth house when its sun is in the ninth house, and then you have a big launch, something else like a next level launch in the 10th house and all that, right? You get what I mean? So that kind of like planning from your own personal first house, but you're planning in the 12th house while the sun is in the 12th house for the year, right? Like in December we plan for the 2024, right? You do it for that reason. That's if you're planning this kind of like say a year-long project like I just described, using your ascendant, your first house, as your starting point, like a go. The project starts then is a good time to plan. And on that note, I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next week.